there, and welcome to Budget in Focus, a special program where we will take a look at the work plans and programs contained in the National 2021 budget. With us today, we have in studio the Honorable Minister of Public Works, Honorable Bishop Juan Edghill. Minister, thank you for joining us and welcome to NCN.
Greetings to you, to all your viewers and your listeners. Certainly a pleasure to be here.
Great. So let's get right down to it. On Friday evening, we saw the presentation of the National 2021 budget, which is $383 billion. There is a huge chunk there allocated to public works, roads, sea defense, hinterland development, and part of the PPP's manifesto that he campaigned on spoke about road networks, spoke about hinterland development, spoke about airstrips, development in the hinterland, and we've seen a lot of allocations in the budget being dedicated to these areas. Your thoughts on the budget 2021, that is, and how we're going to see those allocations benefiting the Guyanese people?
Well, let me begin by saying I'm sure that the majority of Guyanese, they are overjoyed about two things. One, there is no additional burden on the taxpayer to finance the budget. By that we mean no new taxes. Because every time there's a budget, people are concerned about additional burdens in terms of taxation.
Yes.
So yes, it's a $383 billion budget, but it's not a burden in increased taxes on the taxpayer. And then secondly, the reason why people can have joy is because in that budget, it addresses every segment of society: the poor, the vulnerable, the disabled, single women, hinterland communities, the private sector, education, health, and in my field, of which the President has asked me to be his lead team member in the area of public works and development, we have seen significant allocations to fulfill the vision that we have articulated in our manifesto, and secondly, the resources to satisfy the demands and the requests from the population. So we are doing big things in this budget, but we are also addressing the irritants in the communities, which would include community bridges, community roads, community footpaths, because while I could sit here and talk about the grandeur of a massive 4-lane, high-span bridge, trying to get people to envisage a bridge that is going to be higher or almost the same height of the Marriott Hotel, spanning the Demerara River, ships passing underneath, no more retractions, and people would feel excited about that conversation. When the man comes out of his gate, he says, what about my road? What about my bridge? So yes, Budget 2021 in the area of public works, we are addressing the big transformative projects, but we're also dealing with the local issues at the community level. So there are about close to $26 billion allocated for roads and bridges. And out of that, 9.1 billion, thereabout, is an allocation for what is called miscellaneous roads. Right now, as we speak, as a result of the 2020 budget and the supplementary provisions that we received, we have about 168 roads that are being constructed right now in all 10 administrative regions. 168 roads. Now, that sounds like a big job. It is a big job, but it is not answering the total need, because our engineers, when I send them out after we assumed office to consult with the neighborhood democratic councils and so on, we could have only accommodated 2 roads in every NDC. 2 in every NDC.
And of course, that is not even a tip of the iceberg
That's
of
not
everything
a tip
else.
of the iceberg.
Yes.
So while we are continuing those projects, which most of them will be finished March, latest May, that started late 2020, we'll be able to go into new projects with that allocation to answer some of those same needs. Along the East Coast, from the 4-lane and then the upgrade that we did from Better Hope to Belfield, we have identified with some savings that we have from that loan to do about 18 connector roads. So villages along the East Coast corridor, where that new road is built, the roads that feed into that major highway, we want to be able to do about 18 of such roads. That is being finalized. So that's an important development. Along the East Coast, which is the railway embankment, starting at David Street, where there will be the roundabout coming off of the Sheriff Mandela upgrade,
Right.
we want to be able to remove all of the aquapanel bridges and convert them to solid concrete bridges, which could bear the weight of trucks, and you could have traffic there safely.
And I think we've already seen about 3 or
We have done
4
2.
of those.
We have
Yes.
done 2 in the 2020 budget. We want to be able to continue that in the 2021 budget. Just yesterday, I visited our storage site in Region 10 at Wizrock, where I examined the precast culverts that we procured. And the intent of those precast culverts are to be able to put them in place along the hinterland roads so as to be able to put in concrete bridges, thus removing the timber bridges. We just had Tiger Creek, which is a timber bridge that broke. We just had another bridge in Region 9 that broke, that we're trying to manage to get some emergency works done because of the weight on these bridges over a period of time. It's been breaking them. So we don't want any access to communities to be cut off. So the main thoroughfares must be kept open, both in terms of bridges, because if you build a road, it could be the best road, but if when you come to a point there is not a proper bridge, you haven't really done anything for the people.
Correct.
So the roads and bridges must go hand in hand. And then when you build roads, you have to ensure that we have drainage, because if the water remains on the roads, you're undermining the road, and sooner or later it's going to deteriorate and we're going to have to start all over again. So we're paying attention to that in our main thoroughfares, and we're going to also be doing a number of community roads. There is about $2.1 billion in the budget just for hinterland roads. We're continuing the concrete road from Maruka to Quibano, which started in the 2020 budget. We have to get other roads open in the hinterland to be able to give people adequate access. But let's talk about what's happening on the coastline and the massive transformation and development that is taking place. The Ogle to Eccles 4-lane bypass road, the funding for that, the same day that Dr. Ashley Singh read the budget, the Indian High Commissioner communicated to us, me and His Excellency the President, that the Indian government had approved. So that is going out now to tender. You're going to see action on that in 2021. Monies have been placed in the budget to do the connecting road between Eccles and Mandela so that we could be able to have alternative traffic as against just on the East Bank main road to ease that congestion. Then importantly, farm to market and opening up new development roads. 3 major projects that the Air Finale administration we are pursuing a new road from number 58 in the quarantine to Kanji, coming all the way across there, more than 23 kilometers. Now, that's a large swath of farming lands and to facilitate plantation, agriculture, to create pastures for goat and cattle, and to get into poultry rearing and possibilities of aquaculture, and of course, housing development, light manufacturing, agro-processing. A similar type intervention is being done in Region 3. With a connection from the new Demerara Harbor Bridge, we are picking up an alignment at Schoonard, going all the way through the back in a 4-lane highway to come out at Parika, opening again large pieces of land for similar type intervention, including housing development. From Parika, we are building a road all the way to connect to Bartica with the crossing, and then we want to do a road from Bartica to Tamiri. There's an alignment that has already been identified, and former President and former Prime Minister Samuel Hines is very eager on that, because he himself, even out of government in his retirement, have been engaging me on this particular road, and I think he has done his work very well. My own engineers are excited about it, and here it is that we have financing in the budget to be able to pick up that alignment. So people can move goods, fuel, massive supplies, Bartica all the way to Tamiri, connecting with the waterways, which means the congestion of Port Georgetown
would ease significantly.
would ease significantly. People could start opening up new terminals in the upper reaches of the Demerara River to load and to be able to have access. The Linden-Soesdijk Highway, as it currently is, I did it just yesterday twice, going up into visit some roads in the Hinterland and coming back out yesterday evening. The waviness, it's under pressure. Monies have been allocated in the budget to do some interventions on that. The start of the road, which I made light of it the 5 years that we were in opposition, because we left the Linden to Lethem Road in a program. And every year that my predecessor came to Parliament, he was only talking about feasibilities and studies and studies. It looks like the APNU AFC has a fetish for studies, that's employing two people. And I used to say two jobs. I used to say that every year, 2 jobs. Well, the truth about it, since we are in office, we have successfully completed the negotiations with the Caribbean Development Bank. We have had the approval from the Caribbean Development Bank. The $150 million from the UK SIF that is being administered through the CDB is now available. 2021, we are going out for tender. A contractor is going to be on that road, opening up Linden to Mabura. We look forward, probably with a private sector investor through a PPP, to do a bridge at Currapakari. President Bolsonaro and his foreign minister have engaged His Excellency and Minister Todd. I was part of those meetings when the foreign minister came. And part of our agreement of a memorandum of understanding is the Brazilian involvement in continuing that road from Linden all the way to Lethem. So even though we have funding right now from the CDB to carry the road to Mabura, we are working to get the funding and the partnership to get it all the way to Lethem. And we're also discussing the possibility in that same alignment to put a railway so that you can have
transfer of goods and
services into northern Brazil. And and that must connect with a deep water harbor in Region 6. And that means that road coming all the way out of Lethem into Linden. But rather than coming to Georgetown and then head back to Berbice to the deep water harbor, we are looking at moving it across to Aichuni in the Demerara and cut an alignment all the way to connect to get it into the deep water harbor in the Berbice River. So that is also work that is ongoing. So that is why I prefer to talk about the small things that we are doing for the man in the community first, because people could stand in awe about these massive projects. You know, the 8 hotels or so that you will see in construction means that we have to create the infrastructure to facilitate that kind of development.
Correct.
We are talking about building stadiums in all 3 counties. People have to get there for those games and activities and get back home safely. We're talking about cutting travel time. So rather than you spending 40 minutes to an hour moving out of Diamond to Georgetown on a daily basis, you can cut that in half by getting to work in 20, 25 minutes. People coming from Tushen and Zealot and Iflot to Georgetown to work must be able to do that in 30, 35 minutes as against an hour and a half with all of the traffic congestion. Now, while we're doing all of that, in terms of roads, bridges, the Quarantine River Bridge, the expressions of interest are going to close tomorrow, the 15th. Today is Valentine's Day, the 14th, tomorrow, the 15th. Now, persons are going to be allowed 2 weeks after tomorrow to get the hard copies by mail. And we give an extension because of the difficulty with movement of mail in the COVID-19 environment.
Right.
But by soft copy, the submissions have to be made tomorrow to both Guyana and Suriname. And we have made it very known that if the hard copy comes in and it differs from the soft copy is what? Because that is the one for the deadline for the 15th. So we are closing on the Suriname bridge, so we want to be able to advance that conversation with our Surinamese to build that bridge across the Quarantine River. But may I remind, that bridge is supposed to pass through and have a, excuse me, a landing at an island in the Quarantine River called Long Island, in the Dutch Lang Island. That island is to be developed into a free zone with hotels, recreational parks, water sports, farmers market, restaurants, maybe golf club, football field. It's a big island. So the possibility of interaction and engagement, and more than anything else, commercial enterprise is a possibility. But think about it. A farm at Hubu picks a canter-load of pumpkins, and sometimes can't sell all in Guyana. In 5-6 hours, that farmer is all the way in Suriname with the Quarantine Bridge. With the Linden Lethem road with a bridge already, the Takatu Bridge across the Takatu River with Brazil, his peppers, his watermelons, is all the way into North Brazil. Maybe on the economy of scales, a supplier or a wholesaler in Brazil, getting it into other places, processed into South America. So with our road network, we are moving our farmers to a market that is beyond 750,000 to millions. And then we are linking the corridor, French Guyana, Suriname, Guyana, North Brazil. So Brazil could be linked because of its wide expanse, coming through French Guyana, Suriname, Guyana back into Brazil. It's a whole corridor of possibilities and trade. And that's the vision that we are taking to the people, and Budget 2021 addresses that.
Minister, I'm so glad that we're able to see these things coming to reality, because the PPP did mention it in their manifesto, and you're seeing those promises coming to reality. So I think people are watching and they're saying, okay, these people promised this and they're delivering. One of the other areas that I really want to touch on is hinterland development. And you mentioned a lot of that, even as you spoke about roads and bridges. And you know, oftentimes we hear, oh, it's only the persons on the coastline who are benefiting from government services. But Budget 2021 caters in a large way to persons also living in the hinterland. One of the areas that we can see that is the allocations for hinterland airstrips. Can you tell us a little about that area?
Well, Gomati, as the Minister responsible for Public Works, I was extremely disappointed and saddened by what I will call the sheer neglect of the previous administration on hinterland communities. Not only in not doing Amerindian land titling and support for Amerindian villages through the presidential grant. The Minister of Amerindian Affairs will deal with that, but let's just deal with the hard infrastructure. The airstrips, many of them were neglected. Karasparo is in a bad shape. Iteringban had to be left for weeks without being used. And the maintenance and expansion of the airstrips were not in any way compared to the expansion of fleet. All of the airlines operating out of Ogle, the Eugene Correa International Airport at Ogle, are expanding. They're buying more planes, bigger planes. Mining, movement of people from the hinterland to the coastline using air traffic. Airstrips are not just a thing that you leave there. They got to be maintained. The safety measures must be in place. And out of that allocation, we're going to continue work with Lethem, creating Lethem into a regional hub. Lethem is going to look like Ogle sooner rather than later. So flights can come Caribbean, Lethem into Brazil, Brazil into other parts of South America. Or the bigger haulers can come London, New York, Miami, CGIA. Connecting flights, CGIA, Lethem. Then you distribute to where you want to go. Now, so we are developing that. But Madhya must become a regional hub. People must not only fly to Madhya and then you have to be able to sit there for hours for shuttles to get into Paramakatoi or to Kato or to some of the other areas. But we must be able to see Madhya develop. They must be able to have a fuel farm. So you have bigger carriers flying Ogle, Madhya, and then you have the smaller planes shuttling, and we must have those airstrips very developed. And importantly, I met with the National Two-Shows Council just last Monday, and I told them one of the things that I want to see is that the villages that are closely aligned to airstrips or villages that depend on these airstrips of supply, that the village council gets the contract for the maintenance so that they would not become overgrown with bushes. The potholes will be addressed, the drainage on the airstrips will be there, enhancing safety while creating employment and opportunities for the villages. So in terms of hinterland travel, airstrips are very important. We have to continue to regulate through the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority, safety with the various carriers. And one of the things that I'm expressing concern with is that even though we took off the VAT from hinterland travel in the 2020 budget, the two shows are indicating to me that the price for the fares to the interior did not go down. they remain the same, which means somebody is profiting when the removal of VAT should have gone on to the consumer. So we have to keep hinterland roads open, but flight into hinterlands. And that also has to do with medical evacuations and emergencies, because our women are very precious to us. Happy Valentine's to all our women. A woman in childbirth that needs emergency surgery, we don't need to have a complaint that the plane can't land to pick her up. I can't live with that on my conscience. We must not say that's an interior or hinterland person. The same access of an ambulance that you can call and get somebody out of Bel Air or Prashad Nagar or BV or Anns Grove into Georgetown, we must be able to get a medical evacuation out of any part of the interior to save that woman and her baby and to give that family the joy that they deserve. So the caring approach is that we will continue. 415 million cannot fix everything.
But it's a start.
But it's where we're going to be making interventions based upon priorities, because of the deficit that exists. You now have to prioritize what is urgent, what can give us another 6 months, but there are things that we have to make interventions now. So you have to do maintenance, you have to do new projects, and you have to be able to make that judgment call of keeping things going. It's a very difficult thing. I wish we could have gotten more, but 415 million is significantly good in terms of a number for us to be able to work with. Navigational safety, we pay significant amount of monies, the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority, going through their budgets to companies to ensure that we can remain in contact with flights, whether it's purchase of time on satellites and all the rest of it. So it's not just the plane picking up and landing. We have to be able to ensure that air navigation is also safe, and we're doing that. All of the markings on the runways and giving way to that. We want to continue to do that. And some areas, while they depend on road and aircraft, others, it's the ferry.
Yes.
Others, it's the ferry. And there again, we had significant neglect. Budget 2021 allocates $500 million for the rehabilitation of vessels. And we will be paying attention to this. You would know that we have signed a contract with India, making available monies to build a new boat to Region 1, which will service both Kumaka, Morowaina, and Port Kaituma. And we were able to do so with savings, that the savings from that line of credit, both loan and grant, monies can be used to upgrade the stellings. And this was a project that we left 5 years ago, believe it or not. Just where we left it 5 years ago,
You had to come and pick it up back.
pick it back up. What did they do for 5 years? It's unbelievable. It would appear, Gomati, that one of the things, and Guyanese must know this, and they must know it well, the Granger administration was incapable of negotiating and resolving conflicts. Look what we got in terms of the signing bonus. It would appear that they are unable to get collaboration with international partners. You see on the ferry and the solar panels and the road.
Linden to Mabur.
No, the road Ogle to Eccles, which is funded by the Indian government. His Excellency, the High Commissioner here, seeing the energy, enthusiasm, and vision of our administration, he worked on Indian Independence Day, a holiday, to facilitate Guyana. Something was sitting there for 5 years. And here you have the representative of the government of India in Guyana working on India's Independence Day to facilitate Guyana to get these things moving. why that could not have been done before. And then we have somebody coming with a snide remark about the ferry. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't get it done. It's been done, and you're trying to make light of serious benefits to people. And that kind of behavior is intolerable. But we have $500 million. We'll be doing some work on the boats. We want to ensure that they are serviceable and they keep going, because let me just show you. We had both the MV Kimbia and the MV Barima was down for more than 2 weeks. One because of an engine problem, and one because of serious concerns with holes that had to go into the dry dock. You see, for those 2 to 3 weeks, families were stranded in Georgetown. They had to pay hotel bills. Goods did not get up to Region 1 through ferry. So everything that went by plane, the price went up, because remember, air freight is by the pound.
Right.
It was 3 weeks of hardship. I led from the front, going down to the dry dock, engaging MacCorp that was looking the engine, working daily with the chairman of the board of the Transport and Harbors Department and the general manager to ensure that there was no loss of time. Both vessels came out ahead of schedule because we knew the importance of the people. I'm glad that Budget 2021 makes allocations so that we can be able to respond to such eventualities.
Minister, thank you so much for that. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. We'll probably have to have you back here in studio some other time during the week, but thank you so much for joining us here today and expanding on the work program and plans that you have for your ministry in the 2021 budget. Viewers, that is all from us today. Thank you for joining us, and do have a safe and blessed rest of the week. Goodbye.